Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Before we even touch the ball, or honestly, before we even try to process what happened in Paris, I need you to do one thing for me. If you love rugby, if you live for the Six Nations, and if you want to understand the why behind the scores, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Rugby Obsession right now so you never ever miss an update. We have got a massive season ahead of us, and if round one is anything to go by, it is going to be unpredictable.
Unpredictable is certainly one word for it, though looking at the tape, explosive might be the better fit for what we just watched.
Absolutely. And today, well, today's Friday, February 6th, 2026, we are waking up to a very different rugby landscape than the one we went to bed with. We are looking at the aftermath of the Six Nations opener in Paris, and let me tell you, the headlines are not holding back. I'm seeing words like horror show being thrown around for Ireland, while France is being hailed for an absolute masterclass.
It is heavy stuff. Honestly, looking at the reports and the analysis we have gathered, horror show might even be putting it mildly for the Irish fans. This wasn't just a loss. This was a systematic dismantling. The sources are calling it a shell-shocking result, and I think that word choice is deliberate. It implies trauma, not just a defeat on the scoreboard.
Shell-shocking is exactly right. I mean, we are talking about the reigning champions here. This isn't a team used to losing, let alone getting thumped.
And that is why this duck dive is so important. We aren't just looking at a scoreboard. We are looking at the evaporation of an aura, that sense of invincibility that Ireland has carried. It is, well, it's gone.
So let's unpack this properly. Our mission today is pretty clear. We need to figure out how France managed to keep Ireland scoreless for nearly an hour. We need to analyze this new vulnerability that everyone is suddenly seeing in the Irish team, and honestly, we need to ask what this means for England and Scotland. Because looking at the press this morning, the sharks are definitely circling.
They smell blood in the water. And while it is a grim morning for Ireland, from an analytical perspective, it is.
So it's fascinating. There is so much to learn from how France executed this game plan.
So let's jump right into the deep end. Segment 1, the horror show. Ireland unraveled. I want to start with the numbers because they are stark, almost unbelievable for this Irish side. Ireland conceded 29 unanswered points.
29.
To nothing.
It's a stat that almost doesn't look real when you write it down. In modern test rugby, between two top-tier nations ranked 1 and 2 not so long ago, 29 zero runs just don't happen often.
Yeah.
That is complete domination.
And get this, they didn't score a single point before halftime. I was digging through the archives to see when the last time they were blank like that was, and you have to go back to Twickenham in 2020. That is 6 years ago. That context matters. But what is fascinating here is not just the zero on the scoreboard, it is the duration of the silence. It wasn't a slow start where they clawed back in after 20 minutes. It took almost an hour, 60 minutes of rugby for Ireland to get off the mark. That tells you this wasn't just a bad bounce of the ball, it was a systemic failure to impose their game.
An hour feels like a lifetime when you're out there on the pitch, doesn't it? Just chasing shadows.
It is suffocating, and the sources highlight something really interesting about the atmosphere inside the Stade de France. The killer moment wasn't necessarily a specific try. It was the hush that followed the game. It was this realization settling over the crowd and the pundits that Ireland had been, to quote one of our sources, outthought, outgunned, and outclassed.
Outclassed is a painful word for a team that walked into that stadium ranked number 2 in the world. You have to look at the leadership. What did the boss have to say? We have quotes here from head coach Andy Farrell. He usually defends his boys to the death, but he didn't mince words this time, did he?
No, he didn't. And that is typical Farrell. He's honest to a fault, which I appreciate. He admitted the team lacked intent. Now, pause on that for a second. For a professional side, especially one known for its ruthlessness and precision, lacking intent is a damning criticism. He specifically criticized them for reacting when it's a little bit too late.
Lacking intent feels like a mindset issue, doesn't it? Like they weren't mentally at the races.
It starts in the head, but it manifests physically on the field. If we dig into the tactical analysis, Farrell pointed out that without the ball, Ireland lost the intensity battle. He talked about the high ball, winning scraps on the floor, and specifically the collisions. He said they came off second best.
For the listener who maybe doesn't obsess over the stats or the terminology, coming second best in the collisions basically means you're losing the physical fight for space.
Precisely. It means when you run with the ball, you're getting stopped behind the gain line. You are moving backward. When they run at you, they're making meters after contact. If you are missing tackles, and we will get to the specific stats on that later because they are shocking and you aren't winning those scrappy moments, you cannot impose your game plan. Farrell called the response gallant, but he rightly pointed out that you don't want to be a responding team. You need to show up from the get-go.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting for me. We have this vivid image from the sources. Brian O'Driscoll, Irish rugby royalty, standing pitchside in Paris.
The legend himself. When BOD speaks, the rugby world tends to listen.
He's there in his dark puffer jacket against the Parisian chill, looking at the wreckage of this performance. And his take, it actually gave me chills.
It was a very significant moment of analysis. O'Driscoll didn't just talk about missed tackles or dropped balls. He used the V word.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerable. That is not a word we've associated with Ireland for a long, long time. He said, "What concerns me is that now there is a vulnerability to this team." He pointed out that this looks nothing like the Irish team that was at the World Cup in Paris just 2 years ago.
That feels like a huge fall from grace in just 2 years. We're talking about the same core group of players, largely.
It is. And O'Driscoll's insight here is psychological. He believes this result changes how opponents view Ireland. It's the blood in the water effect. He said other sides will look at them and think, this is a team in transition. There are scalps to be had.
Scalps to be had. That is not what you want to hear if you're wearing green. It changes the whole dynamic of the tournament.
And he was specific, too. He didn't just mean the big guns like England or France.
Right.
He mentioned Italy.
Italy.
Really?
Yes. Italy comes to town next week. O'Driscoll thinks even Italy will look at this tape and think, we can actually beat this Irish team.
Yeah.
He noted that in previous years, that thought simply wasn't realistic. It was damage limitation for them. But now, the door is open. That is a massive shift in the Six Nations ecosystem. If teams stop fearing you, you are in trouble. You lose that psychological 5-point head start you used to have before kickoff.
The fear factor is currency in test rugby. It buys you time, it buys you penalties, it makes the opposition hesitate, and Ireland just went bankrupt in Paris.
Man, that is tough to hear. But look, we have to flip the coin. Because as bad as Ireland was, we can't ignore the other side of the pitch. France was spectacular.
They were electric. It was vintage French flair, but with a brutal physical edge.
Before we get to the French fireworks, though, I just want to take a quick second. If you are enjoying this breakdown, if you like getting past the headlines and into the real story of why these games play out the way they do, make sure to subscribe to Rugby Obsession to keep up with the tournament. We are doing this for every major twist and turn.
Absolutely. You won't want to miss what comes next, especially with how open the table looks now.
So France, the masterclass. What fueled this? Because they came out like men possessed. Was it just home advantage?
It wasn't just tactics or the crowd. It was raw emotion. And we have a really interesting connection here, provided by Mako Vunipola.
The England and Lions prop. What's he got to do with a France-Ireland game?
Well, remember, he plays his club rugby in France now for Van. He has his ear to the ground. He warned everyone earlier in the week. He spoke about the situation with Uini Atonio.
Right, the French prop. I remember reading about that.
It was tragic. Atonio had a heart attack and was forced into immediate retirement. It was a huge shock to the French rugby community. He's a massive figure, literally and figuratively. Vunipola predicted that the national team would step it up a level in reaction to that. They were playing for their mate.
That is powerful motivation. You can't coach that kind of emotional edge. It makes you run a little harder, hit a little deeper.
You really can't fake that. And add to that the return of the king, Antoine Dupont.
His first Six Nations start since that ACL injury,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Since he ruptured his ACL against Ireland previously. So think about the narrative in the French changing room. You have the Atonio factor. You have the return of their talisman Dupont seeking redemption. And you have the lingering memory of previous clashes. It created this perfect storm of passion play, as the sources call it.
But emotion can be dangerous, right? It can make you undisciplined. So how do you channel it?
Oh, they had a plan. Sean Edwards, the France defense coach, who is usually all about structure and discipline, basically told everyone what the plan was before kickoff.
He gave away the game plan.
He announced the objectives. Ambition and excitement.
Ambition and excitement. I love that. Especially coming from a defense coach.
It tells you they weren't going to play it safe. And they delivered. But what's fascinating is how they rode their luck initially to get there. The game could have turned in the first 2 minutes.
What do you mean?
Well, remember Charles Ollivon?
Oh, the knock-on. I had my head in my hands watching that.
He had the line at his mercy. He knocks it on. Ireland gets let off the hook massively. In a different timeline, or with a different mindset, Heads drop, the crowd groans, momentum shifts back to Ireland. But not this France team. Ollivon didn't crumble. He redeemed himself later with a try. But the point is, they kept the throttle down despite the error.
And once that throttle was stuck open, the floodgates just opened.
They did. You had Mathieu Jalibert scoring at 22 minutes. One of the sources calls him the magician, and you could see why. He was pulling strings everywhere.
But we have to talk about the star of the show. The man of the match, in my eyes, Louis Bielbiore.
An incredible performance. Just world class.
The sources are calling him masterful and magic. He scored 2 tries, and the speed, he makes fast players look slow.
He does, and the timing of his scores was devastating. By the time he bagged his second try, France had secured the bonus point. The source describes them as being over the hill and far away at that point.
Over the hill and far away. That's a long way back for Ireland.
There was no coming back. When you have speed and finishing ability like Bielbiore, and, this is key, you are playing off the front foot provided by that emotional, rampant forward pack, it's virtually unstoppable. Ireland was chasing shadows.
So what does this all mean? We have a shell-shocked Ireland and a rampant France. Let's look at the fallout and the future implications in segment 3, because the finger-pointing has definitely started, and it's getting personal.
It always does after a result like this. The media needs a scapegoat, and fans want answers.
And unfortunately, a lot of it is pointing at the number 10 jersey, Sam Prendergast.
Yeah, it is the toughest position to be in when your team is losing.
The sources are pretty brutal here. One description called him slow as dial-up.
Ouch. That is vivid.
Slow as dial-up. I haven't heard that one in a while. And another said it was an utterly woeful display that he will want to forget. He's a young guy stepping into big shoes.
It is harsh, but Test rugby is unforgiving. When the team doesn't function, the fly half takes the heat because they are the conductor. If the orchestra sounds bad, you blame the guy with the baton. But if we zoom out, we have to be fair. It wasn't just him. We have to look at the defense as a unit.
The captain, Caelan Doris, had some things to say about that, right? He didn't hide behind the youngster.
No, he was very honest. He admitted they were passive. And here's the stat that matters, the one that probably kept Andy Farrell awake last night. 19 missed tackles.
19.
In a single match.
19. At this level, you cannot miss 19 tackles and expect to compete. That's essentially giving France 19 free opportunities to break the line. Doris explicitly said it was the collisions that let us down. They allowed France to get phases, keep the ball alive, and just flourish.
So it's a systemic failure. It's not just one guy having a bad day at the office.
Correct. And that feeds back into this idea of the aura evaporating. This wasn't a fluke. It was a breakdown of the system that made Ireland great. Talk to me about this trend. Because when you look back, this isn't an isolated incident, is it?
No, and that is the real worry for Irish fans. If you look at the trajectory over the last 12 months, a year ago, they were champions. They were Grand Slam winners. Ranked #2.
Top of the world, basically. Everyone was trying to copy their blueprint.
And now, the source puts it brutally, they were scrummaged into oblivion by South Africa in the autumn. That was the first crack in the dam. And now they've been ripped apart by France in the spring.
Scrummaged into oblivion and ripped apart. That is heavy language.
That is the language of a team that has lost its physical dominance.
Yeah.
The source calls them a shell of that team. They aren't bullying teams anymore. They are getting bullied.
So looking ahead, the Sharks are circling. We mentioned Italy, but the big dogs are watching too.
Absolutely. The source explicitly mentions England.
What's the verdict there? England versus Ireland is always spicy.
England is primed to feast on complacency. If Ireland repeats this kind of passive performance on the final weekend, England will be licking their lips. They have the power game to exploit those same weaknesses France just exposed.
Feast on complacency.
Yeah.
That is a scary thought for Andy Farrell. He has to wake this team up and fast.
And don't forget Scotland. Ireland has to go to Murrayfield in round 4. That is never an easy trip, and Scotland will smell blood in the water. If they see Ireland missing tackles and losing collisions, they have the backline to punish that just as hard as France did.
Is there any silver lining here? Anything Ireland can cling to? Or is it all doom and gloom?
Well, there is a small counterpoint in the analysis. Ireland's bench prevented total embarrassment.
How so?
Technically, if you look at the scoreboard, they drew the second half.
Technically. That sounds like clutching at straws a bit.
It is a small consolation, I know. But they stopped the bleeding eventually. Ronan Kelleher even had a try chalked off for a knock-on. If that had stood, The scoreboard would have looked a little more respectable, but let's be honest with ourselves. The damage was done early. The game was over before the bench even really got involved. It was garbage time.
Yeah, drawing the second half when you're down 29-0 is, well, it's better than losing it, I guess.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fix the fundamental problem of the first hour.
No. It's papering over the cracks. You can't win a Six Nations by playing well for the last 20 minutes when the other team has already started celebrating.
So here is the big question, and I want to throw this out to you listening right now. We want to know what you think. Is this just a stumble for Ireland, a bad day at the office against a rampant French side? Or is the era of dominance officially over? Are we seeing the end of the Irish golden generation?
That is the million-dollar question. And I would add to that, did the emotional factor of the French performance surprise you? We talk a lot about tactics and stats on the show, but today showed that heart and emotion playing for Antonio, playing for the jersey, can still blow a tactical plan out of the water.
It really did.
Yeah.
It felt like France was playing a different sport for that first hour. It was chaos, but beautiful chaos.
If I had to summarize, I'd say this. It is too early to anoint France as champions. We're only in round 1, and this tournament is a marathon, not a sprint. But they have set the standard. When you have match winners like Jalabert, Dupont, and Bielabiri all clicking at the same time, that is terrifying for everyone else in the competition.
It really is. The bar has been raised.
As for Ireland, Farrell returns home beaten but not broken, as the source says. But the aura, that invincibility, that is gone. They have to rebuild it from scratch starting next week against Italy.
Beaten but not broken. We will see if they can fix the cracks before Italy arrives. This has been a fascinating look at a truly shocking result.
Absolutely. It is why we love this tournament. Nothing is guaranteed.
Exactly. And that is a perfect place to leave it. Before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Rugby Obsession right now. You do not want to miss our analysis of the next round, especially to see how Ireland responds. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.